Welcome everybody. It's wonderful to have so many people from all around the world join us today for the Sparx Global Webinar Series. The webinar today is entitled An Introduction to Using ArchiMate in Enterprise Architect. For those that have not heard me before, my name is Scott Hebbard and I'm the Communications Manager here at Sparx Systems, and I'm very pleased to be joined by Gillian Adens. Gillian is the Director at Sparx Services UK, and Sparx Services UK is the authorised services partner for Sparx Systems for the United Kingdom and Northern Europe. Gillian studied joint honours in mathematics and computer science at Glasgow University and is a chartered IT professional member of the British Computer Society. She has a great deal of expertise in UML, BPMN and ArchiMate and other industry standard notations. Gillian currently provides formal training and consulting services to a wide range of organisations. She has considerable experience of software project management, analysis and design techniques, assists clients with the adoption of processes, tools and technology. So we're very pleased to have Gillian join us today. The agenda, we're going to talk about how to submit questions. We're going to introduce some ArchiMate concepts. We're going to use Enterprise Architect itself and a model in EA that we'll use to present all the topics. And at the end, we'll have a Q&A session, and looking forward to that. Now, as for how to ask questions, please note that audio will be muted for all participants. You'll be able to type your questions to the host, and if we can't answer all questions live, we'll follow up offline. We generally provide the questions and publish them on the Sparx Systems website, and we try to get the video published on YouTube within 24 hours of the live webinar. So here's the question dialog. Simply enter your question and you can hit send or hit enter on the numeric keypad, and that'll come through to myself. But right now I'd like to hand over to Gillian, who's going to present on using ArchiMate in Enterprise Architect. So welcome, Gillian. It's great to have you join us. And I can now see that the Enterprise Architect model is on the screen. So I'll hand over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Thanks for such a lovely introduction as well. Hello to everyone. I'm delighted to be invited by Sparx Systems to deliver this webinar today. In this presentation, I'm going to share our experience of using ArchiMate in Enterprise Architect. We've been working with a wide range of customers from different market sectors, many of whom are using ArchiMate to document their enterprise architecture and understand the complex dependencies that exist between people, processes, products, applications, data, hardware and system software. Many customers also benefit from using ArchiMate to create capability maps for strategic planning and develop motivation models for project justification. So in this presentation today, I'll first introduce the ArchiMate standard, look at how it relates to TOGAF and how the language is structured. I'll then show you some example viewpoints using ArchiMate business, application, technology, strategy, and motivation concepts. ArchiMate is an industry standard developed and maintained by the Open Group, who are a global consortium with more than 800 member organisations. ArchiMate is a graphical notation for modelling architecture concepts. The core framework consists of 3 layers: business, application, and technology. The business layer allows us to model our organisation structure, business functions and processes, as well as services and products that we offer to external parties. The application layer allows us to document our application landscape and understand interfaces and dependencies that exist between these applications. The technology layer allows us to catalogue our infrastructure, all of our hardware, system software, and networks. Of course, ArchiMate has evolved over the years to become fully aligned with the Open Group's Architecture Framework TOGAF by adding physical elements, such as allowing us to model facilities like buildings and factories, and the equipment and materials used in a production or distribution process. We also have implementation and migration elements to allow us to plan projects, identify work packages and deliverables, and to plan our migration strategy. The introduction of strategy elements allows us to map capabilities and resources and document courses of action emerging from strategic planning. And motivation elements allow us to justify projects by identifying stakeholders, their drivers, documenting our assessments in order to set goals and capture requirements for projects. As you can see from the color coding, the ArchiMate notation maps to the TOGAF architecture development method and allows us to create all the deliverables required at each phase. TOGAF has become very widely used throughout the IT industry, and ArchiMate allows us to capture and communicate TOGAF deliverables visually. The core ArchiMate layers are subdivided into active structure, behavior, and passive structure. The active structure elements are those that are capable of performing behavior. So for example, in the business layer, it might be a business role. In the application layer, we could have application components. And in the technology layer, we can have technology nodes representing hardware devices or system software. Behavior elements represent the nature of the behavior being performed. So for example, we have business functions and processes, application functions, and technology functions. And passive structure elements are what the behaviors act upon, often data elements. So for example, we have business objects up in the business layer, data objects in the application layer, and artifacts representing the physical storage of data down in the technology layer. This structure allows us to describe our enterprise architecture in logical sentences, such as our flower seller is assigned to sell flowers, and this updates the stock levels. Note that all of the structural elements in ArchiMate are represented by rectangles with right-angled corners, whereas the behavioral elements have rectangles with rounded corners. ArchiMate also permits derived relationships. So if we know that A is connected to B and B is connected to C, we can derive that A is connected to C. Hence, we can derive that our flower seller updates the stock levels. This permits us to pick and choose which ArchiMate concepts to use or include in each of the viewpoints that we produce. Hence, we can present high-level views to business and management stakeholders and more detailed views to our more technical audience. ArchiMate's available in all editions of Enterprise Architect, Professional, Corporate, Unified, and Ultimate. As you can see in Enterprise Architect version 15.2, we have support for ArchiMate version 3.1, and it's supported through a variety of different diagram types and toolboxes that allow us to very easily create all of the different ArchiMate elements that we require on our viewpoints. If we take a look at the business layer toolbox, we can see that all of the core layers have toolboxes split into pages. The top page allows us to access the structural concepts, the active structural concepts. The next page down lets us access the behavioural concepts. And below that, we have the passive structure concepts. So we have our standard business application and technology layer diagrams, and the physical elements, they appear on the technology toolbox. You can see them down here. The strategy elements, they are part of the motivation toolbox, so they can be accessed from here. And of course, the migration elements are part of the implementation toolbox, these elements here. So we have access to all of the behaviours that we require. We'll start by taking a look at the business layer and some of the standard viewpoints in the business layer. So this is an organisation view, which documents the internal organisation structure and the allocation of responsibilities. On this diagram, we've used nesting of business actors to show that Flower Power, as the entire organisation, breaks down into different departments and teams. We have our nursery staff, our sales department, and our distribution team. And we've also nested inside each of these business actors a number of business roles that each team is assigned to perform. So for example, the nursery staff are assigned to carry out the stock manager and the flower grower roles. However, following best practice, we've first created the aggregation relationships between the business actors to represent the whole part relationships. And we've also created assignment relationships from each of the business actors to the business roles. Now, with just a few elements in our model, a few business layer elements, we can already use Enterprise Architect's traceability mechanisms to explore relationships. So from the Start ribbon, Design button, I can open the traceability window, and if I select the sales department, you'll see that it immediately tells me that the sales department is part of the Flower Power organisation, and that the sales department is assigned the customer manager and the flower seller roles. In addition to this, we can use a relationship matrix from the design ribbon. I can click on the matrix button to open a relationship matrix and create one that's focused on the business layer. So I'm going to drag my business layer and set that to be the source of the matrix. I'm pulling out the business actors, and they're listed down the left-hand side of the matrix. Again, dragging my business layer and setting that to be my target, I pull out the business roles and they appear across the top of the matrix. With a link type set to assignment, green arrows then appear on the matrix to show me all of the relationships that exist in the model. And this is a great way to communicate this relationship information very succinctly and to check the model for accuracy and completeness. Now, I can also go into the options dialog and I can highlight elements that don't have any relationships. And this then shows me empty rows highlighted in blue and empty columns highlighted in pink. So this might indicate that there's some missing information from my model. For example, my retailer business actor should be assigned to the buyer business role. We can use the relationship matrix itself by right-clicking on one of the cells to create a new relationship in the model. So this configuration of the relationship matrix can then be saved as a matrix profile. I've called it business actors to roles, and that business profile then appears on the drop-down list, making it very easy for me to retrieve this configuration in the future. But the matrix is entirely dynamic, so it's going to be populated with any new business actors or business roles that I add to my model. We can even use the common page on the toolbox to add a hyperlink to a specific matrix profile. So I can choose matrix from the hyperlink type and then choose my matrix profile. And then I have a link that I can simply double click on to open up the relationship matrix and select the profile for me. So now let's take a look at another standard viewpoint in the business layer. This is called the Business Process Cooperation viewpoint. It's focused on a business process or a small set of related processes. So our example, we're looking at our sell flowers process, and we're seeing that that breaks down into 3 sub-processes: record order, reserve stock, and take payment. And this is then followed by the dispatch flowers process. You can see that we have added triggering relationships between each of the processes to show the sequential order that they occur in. We also have a business event, the customer order being received, and that business event triggers the sell flowers process. We've identified the business roles and actors responsible for carrying out each of these processes. Our flower seller from the sales department has been assigned to sell the flowers, and the delivery driver from the distribution team has been assigned to dispatch the flowers. These processes are offering valuable flower buying and flower delivery services to our external buyer, part of our retailer customer. So in ArchiMate, we tend to identify business processes and understand how they tie into the enterprise architecture at a high level of abstraction. Of course, companies are perhaps also keen to explore business processes in much more detail, and this can be done as a set of hierarchical BPMN diagrams for each business process, showing all the detailed activities, decision points, events, and responsibilities involved. The beauty of using Enterprise Architect is that not only does it support ArchiMate, but it also fully supports BPMN. And this means that you can have business processes identified in the architecture model and also have BPMN diagrams containing the internal detailed descriptions of these processes. We can link from our architecture model to the detailed models using composite elements. So I can right-click on my record order ArchiMate process, add a new child diagram, and either create a composite structure diagram or select one if my BPMN diagram already exists. Navigate to locate the appropriate BPMN diagram and click OK, and you'll see that record order now has a little infinity symbol in the bottom right-hand corner, indicating that it's a composite element. In the latest version of Enterprise Architect, there's even an option to preview the contents of the lower level diagram, which is very nice. Or of course, I can double click to navigate down into the BPMN diagram and look at the detail there, and either use a hyperlink to navigate back up or use the back button to navigate back into the architecture model. Now, moving on to the application layer, let's take a look at the application cooperation view. You'll notice that the colour of my elements have changed. In Enterprise Architect, all of the business elements are colour-coded yellow, the application elements are pale blue, and the technology elements are green by default. So this is great when we want to show viewpoints where we have business, application, and technology elements layered one on top of the other. The colour coding helps us to easily differentiate between the layers. This particular viewpoint is helping us to understand our software application landscape and define all the interfaces and highlight the dependencies that exist between our applications. You may notice that the notation here is similar to UML notation for components and for interfaces. And this is entirely intentional. The designers of ArchiMate were careful to align their notation with UML wherever it was possible. This means that developers who already understand UML are going to have very little difficulty understanding application and technology ArchiMate models. And it also means that ArchiMate and UML diagrams can coexist in the same Enterprise Architect database, with ArchiMate diagrams explaining the high-level overall architecture, and your UML diagrams used to explore the detailed internal design of each component. So again, you can make the application components into composite elements and navigate off to UML diagrams. Every ArchiMate element can be documented in more detail using the Properties window. You can see, for example, that we have provided an alias for our flower sales application, Petal Power, and this was the name that was previously used for the application, so it's still known by that by some people in the business. We can also add a textual description for our application down in the Notes window as well. And in addition, we can add our own custom properties using tagged values. This allows us to capture extra information that might be of interest to our company. For example, with our application components, we might be interested in knowing their lifecycle stage, the release date of the previous version, and also the current version of the software that we're using. We can use Pseudocode to format these tagged values. So for example, our lifecycle stage is defined as an enum type, and that allows us to have a drop-down list of predefined options. And our release date is set to have a date type, which offers us a little calendar pop-up when we go to change the release date. So you'll see I get a drop-down list for lifecycle stage. We've kept it very simple with just encourage and discourage, but you could have the whole kind of TOGAF range of stages if you wish. And for release date, we get a little calendar so we can pick any valid date. Version we've simply left as a free format text box. Now, if we wish, we can display this information on the diagram. And one way of doing that is to right-click on the application and add a new child element, an attached note. We can then right-click on the link line between the two and link the note to an element feature. I can select the tagged values. Whoops, there we go. And pull those tagged values out onto my diagram. I can even change the look and feel or appearance of the note if I wish. I'll pick a paperclip as an example. So all of these properties and the textual descriptions in your notes, and of course your custom tagged values, these can all be extracted into any documents that you generate out of Enterprise Architect. They can be revealed in HTML reports, or they can be shared on a browser using ProCloud Server combined with WebEx, WebEA, or with Prolaborate. And the standard properties or custom tagged values can also be used to turn a diagram into a heat map using a diagram legend. So from the common area of the toolbox, I'm going to add a diagram legend. I'll change the name of this to say lifecycle stage. Filter either to the standard properties or, as I'm going to do, to one of our custom tagged values. And then enter the possible values. So for encourage, I'm going to give that a positive greeny colour, maybe with a nice dark green outline. And we'll have discourage as the other possibility, and we'll make that maybe just a nice pinky red colour, a danger colour, I guess. And then tick the little box at the top to apply the auto colour to the diagram. And you'll see my components and interfaces are immediately reflecting the life cycle stage that they have set in their tagged values. Moving down into the technology layer now, and we have our technology view. This allows us to capture and catalogue all our company infrastructure, our hardware devices, system software, and to show the communication channels that exist between them. So in this diagram, we have an example of a client workstation on a desktop PC running a Windows operating system and connecting through a LAN network through a router to the back-end application server. Optionally, we can also show the physical location of these devices. And of course, that might influence the choice of communication mechanism that we use to ensure an appropriate level of security on our network. Having documented information in the business, application and technology layers it now becomes quite easy for us to produce a layered view showing the connectivity across our whole enterprise. To create this type of layered view, we can simply drag and drop maybe one of the elements from an existing catalogue onto the diagram. So for example, cell flowers, and then right click and use insert related elements to populate the model with existing elements that are related. So for example, flower buying service and the various application services that are being relied upon. You can see at the top of the diagram, we have our yellow business layer elements. Scrolling down, we've got the blue applications supporting the processes, and further down, the technologies that are supporting the applications. This layered view is very powerful. For example, we may wish to replace a software application, and we can use insert related elements to quickly create a traceability diagram in order to understand the impact of our decision. Will this change just affect a few people working in one department, or is it going to impact lots of different roles across multiple departments? I'm just going to copy the flower sales application and go ahead and create a new application diagram. I'll call it traceability, and I will shallow paste as a link onto the diagram. I'll make the sales application a little bit bigger so that we can spot it easily. And just to show you the power of insert related elements, we can filter on what type of elements we want to pull in or the connector types. And initially we get the immediately directly connected elements, but we can go up to 5 levels away to get all the indirectly connected elements as well. I'll just tick the all box to pull all of that information into my diagram and allow EA to lay out the diagram when complete. So as you can see, that's pulled quite a lot of information onto my diagram. So it might be quite useful for me to use the pan and zoom window to move around this larger diagram. So I'm going to open up the pan and zoom window, and I think I'll just dock it down here on top of the notes window, so it's not taking up too much space. If I move into the middle of this diagram, here's my flower sales application. If I'm about to replace this, it's really useful for me to be able to spot the business processes that are relying on this application. And of course, to be able to see the roles and departments that are using or implementing those processes, and therefore also relying on this application. If I move further down, we can see interfaces that exist to other applications, and those we will need to maintain or replace when we replace our sales application. And again, moving down into the technology layer, we can find out what technologies our current application is using and where it's located as well. So now let's explore how ArchiMate can help us with strategic planning. We'll take a look at a capability map view. This is one of the strategy viewpoints in ArchiMate. We've created a hierarchy of existing and desired capabilities for our organisation. And of course, we can add our own custom properties using tagged values. to record the maturity level that we have for each of these capabilities. This allows us to assess and reflect how mature our organisation is. We can then use a diagram legend, as we did previously, to automatically colour code all of our capabilities. This type of diagram is great input into strategic planning, allowing our senior managers to identify areas for investment and to start to think about different courses of action that they might wish to take to either improve existing capabilities or to introduce new capabilities. So, for example, in Flower Power, we can see that they could benefit from improving their stock management by introducing a new flower forecasting and trend analysis capability. This naturally leads us to creating a motivation view to help us justify the business change and perhaps to request sign-off for starting a new project. You can see on the left-hand side, we've identified stakeholders, identified their key driver, as well as recognising perhaps external drivers that might need to be taken into consideration. We can then perform our own assessment of our organisation's position in relation to these drivers and reveal opportunities for improvement. And this leads us to setting our organisational goals and to stating project requirements, constraints and principles. Of course, our architects are going to understand this diagram because they're already familiar with ArchiMate notation. However, we'll probably need to share this type of diagram with quite a wide range of different stakeholders, senior directors, business people who've not been trained in ArchiMate. So to make this diagram more intuitive, we've used a diagram legend to color code the elements based on their ArchiMate types, revealing our diagram in the colors of the rainbow and allowing everyone to very easily be able to understand this diagram, to discuss it and review. I've actually covered how to create this viewpoint in much more detail in one of my earlier Sparx webinars, and also talked about how to share ArchiMate views like this using ProCloud Server and Prolaborate. So check out the Sparx Systems webinar library or go to the resources page on the Sparx Services UK website if you'd like to watch that video again. So that's the end of today's presentation. Hopefully it's given you a flavour of the power of Enterprise Architect to assist you in documenting and communicating your enterprise architecture using a set of ArchiMate diagrams. I'm a director at Sparx Services UK, also known as Hippo Software. We're the authorised services partner for Sparx Systems in the UK, Ireland and Northern Europe. We offer a wide range of EA webinar training courses, including ArchiMate training, and we also offer EA consulting and mentoring by webinar if you need any assistance on your projects. I'm now happy to pass control back to Scott and to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much, Gillian. It was a wonderful presentation, and in a very short period of time, you were able to show the organisational view, derive relationships, look at traceability, look at the relationship matrix to identify gaps and ensure accuracy and completeness. We looked at creating composite diagrams, using tagged values, looked at capability maps, and a motivation diagram, and much, much more. So there's certainly lots of detail there, and there's a few questions coming in. So I might start with one that was talking about the multiple levels of the showing maturity. Now it is possible in Enterprise Architect to have more than one diagram legend. So can you perhaps discuss how you might be able to show multiple levels of maturity, such as people, process, and IT?
Yes, so diagram legends are obviously a useful way of visually illustrating that on a diagram, but I guess that's the type of thing that we did with the capability map here. The key aspect initially is to set up your own custom properties to hold that information, and you can configure the tagged values to create things like maturity level. So we have just used low, medium and high for maturity level on our capabilities, but you can provide whatever vocabulary you wish to use, and that will then appear as a drop-down list against the custom property. And you can have as many custom properties defined against each element as you wish. There's even mechanisms that you can use to automatically populate the elements with those custom properties as well. Simple mechanisms to do that, and also you could define your own profile if you want to get a bit more sophisticated on that front. So I think
we did have some questions asking, can you create your own custom tagged values, and how you go about that? So
yes, so that's definitely feasible to do. On the properties window, there's a tags tab, and there's a little button on the toolbar there with 3 little tags. If you click on that, it takes you straight into the UML types dialog on the tagged values window. And here you can define your own custom properties. So these have all been set up and defined by us. You can use pseudocode in the detail box to format that tagged value. For access to information on how to do the formatting, if you click on the help button at the bottom of this window, it takes you off to the help system, and there's lots of help in how to define tagged values. There's also a hyperlink to predefined structured tagged values down at the bottom of the page. Click on that and you get a whole table of all the different possible formats that are available. So there's plenty of help in how to set these up. They can also be filtered so that they only apply to certain element types if you want to get a bit more sophisticated as well. So yeah, in terms of recording that sort of information, just set up your own custom properties against all the different elements, and then of course you can use a diagram legend to filter based on that particular tagged value. You can enter the different possible values that the user can select and apply different colors to them. You can interchange the diagram legend, copy, drag and drop diagram legends onto different diagrams to reveal that information. I think it gets a little bit confusing if you try to have too many legends on one diagram, but you could certainly have one legend that sets the fill color and maybe another legend that sets the line color if there's two.
Yeah, I have seen some customers use a separate one for connectors because they find that valuable sometimes too.
Absolutely, so. Scott, that's a very good point. And there's a separate tab there to define colors for the different connectors as well. And I guess in ArchiMate, the symbols are fairly intuitive. there's only a small set of them, so you get familiar with them fairly quickly. But the connectors, there's lots of different connector types, and that can cause confusion for those that haven't had maybe any formal training. So actually having a legend explaining what the connectors mean and color coding them might be quite a useful thing to do.
Excellent. So I've got a question here from Anthony saying, is ArchiMate suitable for large infrastructure projects such as railways? Now, I know I've seen it used in banks and in power infrastructure, but perhaps drawing on your experience, have you seen ArchiMate used for infrastructure projects?
I've seen it used in a wide range of different types of projects. Certainly many of the power companies here in the UK are using ArchiMate for their projects. So yes, I think it can certainly be applicable. I guess the advantage of ArchiMate is that it's at quite a high level of abstraction, so it allows you to get that big picture and that kind of overall understanding of how your whole organisation operates. So there are the physical extensions as well that would allow you to kind of model production or distribution processes quite nicely, so that might be very useful. But I think, you know, in combination maybe with UML or BPMN for the detailed modelling, the nice thing about ArchiMate is that you can get that kind of high level architecture view of how all of the key components fit together. So I think it's generally applicable across most domains. It's not really specific to any one domain.
And one of the advantages of using Enterprise Architect is that you can have, like you showed, composite diagrams that point to UML diagrams or business process modeling diagrams. I've even seen companies that have used some of the new features in EA, such as, you know, modeling some cloud services and things like that, and have that modeled in Enterprise Architect and linked to ArchiMate as well. So there's certainly lots of options.
Yes, I think that's one of the biggest selling points of Enterprise Architect, that it supports so many different industry technologies and allows you to pretty much mix and match those technologies on a specific project. So we've got lots of customers that are using ArchiMate at the high level for their business architecture, but pushing down into BPMN for detailed models, and equally lots of people understanding their application landscape using ArchiMate application components, using it as a way of cataloging all their applications and holding custom properties to kind of understand all the details of those applications. But for the applications that they're developing and maintaining themselves, they might well push down into UML to do the very detailed dynamic modeling, for example, with sequence diagrams and state machines. So I think it's fantastic that you can combine these different technologies within Enterprise Architect. It's one of the few case tools that permits you to do that, so it's a big selling feature.
Yes, it certainly is, and it provides the best of not only both worlds, but every world sometimes, so that's great. Earlier on, you showed the relationship matrix. There's just some questions about, from the relationship matrix, let's say you find a gap, can you actually create a relationship or a connector from the relationship matrix itself?
Yes, so you have the ability to use the relationship matrix to understand any connections that exist within your model. I used it specifically to look at business actors against business roles, but this is a general purpose mechanism. So we could also have had, you know, relationships between business roles and business processes, or between processes and application services. So it's multi-purpose in terms of the types of connections you can reflect, and the cells in the matrix do permit you to edit the relationships. So you might remember that I right-clicked between retailer and buyer and was able to add a relationship into the model. But I can also delete relationships if I wish as well. So it's very much an interactive tool, not just a visualization. And the nice thing about the options is that you can now highlight elements without relationships as well. So if your matrix is quite big, it can be quite tricky to see all of the elements on a single screen, and rather than having to scroll up and down or left and right, these highlights let you very quickly spot empty rows or empty columns in the matrix. So we can see that at the moment, the retailer business actor, there's a blue row there telling us that they're not currently connected to any role at all. And you can also quickly spot that the buyer, because of the pink highlighting in the column, has not been assigned, if you like, to any of the business actors. So to create a new relationship, you just right click on the intersection point on that cell and you can add relationships into the model, and those are going to appear on any diagrams that exist within your model. So by adding that retailer to buyer relationship on the matrix, when I go into my business process cooperation view, this assignment relationship is what was added in the matrix, and it automatically appears on the diagram to show the connection that now exists between the retailer and the buyer role.
Excellent. This is a pretty quick question, but it says, what about TOGAF support? So does Enterprise Architect support TOGAF?
Yes, there is actually a TOGAF add-in for Enterprise Architect. It's got its own element types and toolboxes. So it's got a slightly different vocabulary and notation associated with it. My personal preference is probably to use ArchiMate for even, for TOGAF projects, because there is a very close alignment between ArchiMate and TOGAF. But the TOGAF add-in does give you like a package structure that reflects the TOGAF vocabulary and toolboxes that reflect TOGAF vocabulary. So I guess there's a choice of which way you go. If you want to have a TOGAF project, you can either use the TOGAF add-in with those toolboxes, or just use ArchiMate elements to produce the TOGAF deliverables. And I think that's the kind of way that the industry is typically going now, because obviously ArchiMate and TOGAF are both published by the Open Group, so each new version of these, they're becoming ever more closely aligned.
Excellent. So we'll probably just have another couple of questions and then I'll wrap things up. Does Enterprise Architect support version control?
Yes, to some extent there is a baselining feature built into Enterprise Architect, so you can take any view or package in your browser and you can create a baseline, and that allows you to essentially version different aspects of your model. It's possible to roll back as well to a previous baseline that you've created, and you can compare the current model with previous baselines to see what elements have been added or deleted or changed in the interim time. So that's the kind of internal mechanism, but EA also permits you to integrate with external version control systems if you wish as well. So that would be the other route to go down. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Scott?
The only thing I wanted to add is that there's a detailed version control white paper on the Sparx Systems website. So if you want to learn more, and some people have mentioned Git and other version control systems, but we do allow you to integrate with some of those version control systems. And I would recommend that you download the version control white paper to get some more information.
Yeah, and I think there's some partner companies that have developed some nice add-ons to make it easier to integrate with the likes of Git as well.
Yes, absolutely. So there's certainly lots of options there around version control. So I might just wrap up with one final question. And if somebody that's been listening to this webinar would like to reach out and get some training or some advice around ArchiMate, how can they best reach you? And do you have any public courses that might be relevant around ArchiMate or Enterprise Architect?
Yes, of course. So they can contact us through our website. We also have a phone number and email up on the screen at the moment. We are running public EA webinars on a fairly regular basis, and we have fundamentals courses for those that are completely new to Enterprise Architect. So we have a one-day EA fundamentals, and then we have two ArchiMate public courses, one focused on the kind of business architecture, strategy and motivation side of things, and the other covering the more technical application and technology layers. So through those kind of three public courses, you can pretty much get a complete introduction to EA and ArchiMate, but you can pick and choose. If you already know how to use EA a little bit and you just want to learn how to create the ArchiMate models, then you can just come on the ArchiMate training days. And we also do custom training for customers. So if you want to have a course and you have maybe 3 or more delegates, it becomes more cost effective just to have your own course. And then you can use our EA catalogue and you can pick and choose the modules that you would like to have on your course. So it's highly customizable, and we can follow that up with mentoring if appropriate.
Excellent.
So yeah, feel free to reach out if you need any assistance.
Thank you very much, Gillian. That was a fantastic presentation, and there are quite a few questions coming in, and we will compile those questions and I will send them across, and we'll try and get them published on the Sparx Systems website. There was another couple of questions about, will this be available? A few people were super excited and loved it so much they wanted to show it to their friends. So it will be available on the Sparx Systems YouTube site, and I'll try to publish that. Just give me a few hours for it to render and upload. But yes, certainly within 24 hours, we like to make that available. We usually publish a week later on the Sparx Systems website with some of the Q&A answered. We have a number of Enterprise Architect webinars coming up. So we encourage you to take a look at the Sparx Systems website and the webinar library to look for upcoming titles. And as always, if you have any suggestions for webinar topics or things that you'd like to learn about, feel free to email webinar@sparxsystems.com, and we always take your suggestions into account. I just wanted to bring up the YouTube site. So you can see that the YouTube Sparx Systems website has a number of webinars that have been published and are all free. And recently we've looked at things such as application portfolio management and creating a business capability map using Prolaborate, and looking at Enterprise Architect for business analysis management. And so we have hundreds of videos around Enterprise Architect and Sparx Systems tools such as ProCloud Server and Prolaborate. So if anyone's looking for free resources, we certainly have lots of those available. I'd like to thank you all for your questions. It's been wonderful to have so much interaction from people from all around the world. and it's been great for you to join us, and look forward to seeing you again at future webinars. I'd like to thank Gillian very much for a wonderful presentation. She always does a marvelous job and makes it look so easy using Enterprise Architect to build ArchiMate models. So thank you very much for your time and for all your expertise, Gillian. It's been wonderful.
Thank you for inviting me, Scott.
My pleasure, and take care of one another, look after yourselves, and look forward to seeing you again in the future. And so that's it from Sparx Systems, and take care and see you again soon. Bye-bye.